Bukayo Saka! That is a diamond of a goal! Wanyeri tries one!
Welcome in to Not That Kind of Gooner. It is episode 17, and I am hoping that, like it has been for much of my life, 17 will prove to be a lucky number, because tomorrow we will play PSG once again for the right to now face off with Inter in the Champions League final. So really excited about that. Really looking forward to getting into maybe a brief preview of the PSG match again. But first, we're going to talk about the Bournemouth match. We're going to kind of get into a couple things that happened, maybe talk about some thematic things in terms of what it means for Arsenal's season. We're going to talk about Saliba, once again being pursued by Real Madrid, and news about Jorginho as well. And maybe a couple other things will come up organically along the way. So let's get into all of that. But first, some housekeeping. I'm Sham. You can follow me on Twitter at Shamsdale. You can follow me on Blue Sky at shamsdale.bsky.social. And I'm joined by John, who you can follow on Twitter at 305cast and on Blue Sky at yellowribbons.bsky.social. John, how are you doing, my friend?
Doing good. Thanks for having me again, or being here. I don't know, but I don't know what's going on anymore nowadays. It's like I just this match coming up has got me all flustered. So
busy times. But yeah, before we can talk about what will hopefully be a historic night in Arsenal's history, let's talk about what was a kind of depressing afternoon. Yeah, full disclosure, I was trying to watch this game on a farm, so my connection went. Yeah.
I'm sorry, you can't gloss over that. So what's going on with this farm?
My wife. So we for our wedding, we had this florist who they work out of a farm like an hour drive from us, and we've been trying to get them their tip for over a year for what it was, like a $600.
Did they make you
tip.
work on the farm to pay it off, or what?
No, we had it in an envelope for months, and
it's like a weird version of having to do the dishes when you don't have enough to pay at a restaurant. They make you collect eggs.
Well, we reached out to them and we're like, hey, we have a tip that we want to give you, because apparently that's customary for wedding stuff, and they were like, yeah, cool, and then just we were never able to set up a time with them until this past weekend, and then they're like, oh yeah, I forgot, yeah, why don't you come over this weekend and I can show you the farm and stuff. And my wife is really into gardening, so that was something that was really exciting for her. So we drove down, but it was, by the time we got there, the match had started and the service was going in and out, and I was trying to watch it on my phone, but slyly, so it didn't look like I wasn't paying attention to.
I think we've all been there.
Yeah,
when you're not in a social function and you need to be, paying attention, but there's a big game on, or
they were a good sport about it, but you always feel kind of weird about it, because sometimes you need to explain to people that you're really into sports in that kind of way, and people just some people don't kind of empathize with that. But
yeah, I've had my phone out at a wedding, not at the ceremony, but definitely at the the party, watching either a replay or if it was during the day, they'll have a brunch the next day, and I've been sitting there hungover watching Arsenal on my phone.
I've been at the beach and I've been watching on my phone while everyone else went and hung out in the water, and I was like, yeah, no, I'll catch you guys in 67 minutes. So
yeah. Sorry guys, I have to watch us draw to Bournemouth, or lose. Rather, we didn't even draw, man. We lost.
Yeah, I'm kind of happy that I only caught really the first half, and then kind of it went in and out for about 20 minutes, and then I really had to put my phone away for like the final 25-30 minutes of it. So I'm going off of about 60% of the match watched and some highlights. So
This is going to be a great podcast too, because I am similarly was tangentially paying attention to it. I feel like I started watching, and then the Rice goal went in, and then all the other shenanigans happened, and then it was like, nah.
yeah, and like I don't know. I think you know what it is. I think we feel the same way about the Premier League season that the players might.
Right.
It
They're
just
kind of just like, let's just go through the motions, and then let's not get injured. And we know what's really important in the season. Like, there's only so much gaslighting that Arteta can do with these guys that we have to win every game. Like, I think there's a certain point where even he is like, guys, just don't get injured. And he, although knowing him, he probably is like, no, every single game we got to win this one too. And he's equally upset. But that's probably just him being Arteta. But I feel like if he were smart, that would not be the approach to a game like that, considering what was on the horizon. Like, I think there needs to be a certain degree of just be safe out there. Don't do anything that could jeopardize what's really important in the season now. Although arguably getting some points from that game was important, especially to make our lives easier in the top 4 kind of situation, or top 5, I guess, situation. I think that there's, obviously it would be a very difficult task to finish outside the top 5, but historically, if any team can snatch defeat from the jaws of victory, it's us. Oh, nice. The mood lighting.
Yeah, that's worse actually. Okay, I might try to turn on the overhead light or something. But
for those listening, he's got the lights just went out in Sham the screen.
Because I'm sitting here and just like the lighting, because I normally have this lamp right like to my right on, and it's for 15 episodes it worked, and then the last couple I've noticed that like just the camera's a little blurry. And I thought maybe the light was doing something about that, but I might have to start using my external camera. But yeah, so now I'm just sitting in not pitch black, but like it's pretty dark in here. I thought the window would like put some anyway.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah. But I guess while I'm gonna go turn the overhead light on, but kind of just like on the subject of like motivated players and kind of Arteta trying to instill some sense of jeopardy into this game. What did you make of the fact that we went with a really strong 11 ahead of tomorrow, which is, a monumental game for us?
Yeah, it's a historical game for us, and it's one that kind of dictates how, a lot about fan sentiment about the season. I mean, I feel like we should feel proud about where we are and what we've done regardless, but I think that that's kind of idealistic, perhaps. When you look at the broad scheme of what we've been through the last couple seasons, where we want to see this club going, all this chatter now about losing potential players, which we'll get into later, or having them teased away from us. So there's a lot riding on this game. And I don't want to look like a fool at the end of all of this, but I'm still in the camp of trusting Arteta to make the right decisions with the players he has and the coaching staff that he has, and trusting that he's put the right people around him to give him good advice, and that he would take that advice with respect to how much or little these players should play. And I think that might be a misplaced faith that I have. And it might be one where it's a little bit naive, and it could show to be naive at the end of the day. But there's a certain point where you do have to worry about the amount of football that these players have played, these key players, and the injuries that we've had. And it's one of those games where it's a little odd, because you clearly want to go all out tomorrow, but then there's still a final to worry about. Yeah. And I don't think you can really think that way as the player, though, or the manager. You need to say, our season rides on this game, and then once we get over that hurdle, our season rides on this next game, this final. So I don't think Arteta's going to be looking at it from the lens of being withholding on the risk aspect of playing the players, especially if he's getting advice from his coaching staff and his physios that certain players need to be fit and prepared to play. Because we had Dr. Raj on a while back, and I think that it was kind of interesting to hear his perspective about, as a fan, you look at how much these players have played, and as someone who's not a professional athlete, I just watched how the fact that they can do what they do for 90 minutes once a week is pretty impressive to me. But let alone do what they do. But again, they're a different specimen than your average person. They're a professional athlete. This is what they do. This is what they train for. They have millions and millions of dollars in making sure, in analytics, in training, in knowledge, in history about how these players work, in data about how these players work to make informed decisions about who should play. But that, as a fan, it does concern you to see them play as much as they do, especially with a big game coming up. So you can't really escape that. And you kind of have to put your faith that they're making the right decisions and informed decisions. And that even though you might not understand why a player is not being rotated, there are medical reasons why you would want to play them for to keep their form, to keep them warm, and things like that. But it is absolutely a risk. I don't think that anytime you're going into a professional contest like that, there's always a risk that someone can get injured. And it might not be something that you can predict or anticipate. It's just the way that it's the way it goes. It's physiology, it's physics, it's kinetics. It's just what happens. It's just the luck, bad luck sometimes, a bad tackle. I mean, all of that stuff can happen. So it's concerning in the sense that it's such a big thing that we have coming up. And it's hard to kind of, it's like cognitive dissonance. Like, on one hand, I want to give faith to Arteta and the coaching staff and the players, and the other one, I'm like, oh, can we just play? This game doesn't mean anything. Why don't we just play all the kids or whatever? Like, I'll go out there. I don't care. Like, I'll do it. We'll lose, and it'll be the same thing anyway. We just, we'll lose by more.
Yeah.
So yeah. I think that answered your question.
Yeah. No, I think it was I think it was a great answer. I think you really covered kind of the fitness aspect of it, and that's something I also kind of wondered about when they announced the lineup, right? And admittedly, at the time, I was like, I get it. We're trying to kind of lock up Champions League qualification here. We want to go strong. Bournemouth, have actually been one of the better teams in the Premier League if you look at the underlying stats. And, they're not a team to be taken lightly. So I understand why we did what we did. But in hindsight, I just, it's really clear that a lot of those players were kind of saving themselves for tomorrow. And it kind of makes me wonder, maybe Arteta should have seen that coming. And in that case, why not go with guys like Zinchenko or Wineri, or we have so many injuries. I'm struggling to come up with someone else. Maybe like play Marino in midfield again, or maybe like give Sterling a run out. I know that hasn't been great. I think I'm more so just kind of thinking about like Zinchenko and Wineri. Those are players that I think maybe could have come into this game and played with kind of a level of intensity. Basically, the way I'm thinking of it is for Lewis Skelly and Saka and Odegaard, right? The most important game of the season. Oh, Tierney. Tierney is the other one I'm thinking about, right?
Yeah.
You could kind of find a way to put Tierney in as well, right? If you swapped out Lewis Skelly and Odegaard and Saka, and you put in Tierney and Zinchenko and Wineri, right? For the starters, for Saka, Odegaard, and Miles Lewis Skelly, the most important game right now, or in that moment, was PSG, right?
Yeah.
That was the game that they were thinking about. But for guys coming off the bench, for guys who don't get that many minutes, for guys who are not clear, established starters, the most important game is the next game that they get to play in, right? So, you have, I just have a feeling that if you put guys like that out onto the pitch and gave them something to fight for, because Champions League qualification is still a big deal. I think maybe we would have seen an extra percentage or two more out of the team, and we would have seen a little bit more. I don't want to say effort, but maybe a little bit more fight and less reservedness on the pitch against Bournemouth. But I mean, that now I'm just kind of dabbling in mental aspects I don't really know all that much about. So
Yeah,
I
well,
don't know.
look, so I'm thinking about it. So I kind of just wrote down like, and we could add to this or not, but I'm thinking like upside and downsides, right? So the upside of playing a strong team, obviously, I think there's some fitness that could benefit. So player playing again, as Dr. Raj indicated, is sometimes a good thing, right? They need to maintain a certain level of competitive fitness, and that while a lot of fans think that could hurt players, actually sometimes it's necessary for peak performance to have runs out like that and to keep physically fit. That's just the way that it works sometimes. So that's one upside. Another upside would be the cohesion of the squad, right? So I could see why you'd want them to play another game together in maybe a formation either similar or maybe that would be alternative in case something happens, a game plan that we might have, a backup game plan against PSG, just so that we don't run into the same issue we had in the first leg where, Partey was out and then you had some players that were not playing together. So I think that's one of the upsides. Partey specifically coming back to get, understanding why he'd be in that midfield, missing that last game. You would see why a player like that would need to play. Another upside would be maybe a better chance at top 5, which we kind of touched on, right? The downsides would be, first of all, potential injury to key players, which is something we've discussed. And then I think one that we haven't touched on yet, which I thought of as I was writing it down, was the loss, the fact that we lost. I think the upside of having cohesion might be overly balanced in the opposite direction by a potential mental effect that it would have against losing, which we did. And I don't know if that's going to materialize tomorrow. I hope it doesn't, but it's certainly a risk that you run to drop points in a way like that. Maybe another one is just the nerves of coming off a loss in the fan base. Our away fans are usually great, so I'm not really worried that much. But it is the last two atmospheres in the Premier League at the Emirates have not been something that's to write home about. So I think that you would put maybe in the downside column. And when you balance those two out, I'm sure there's more things to factor out. I'm not sure you can come one way or another as to whether coming out with a strong team was the right choice. I think that it's one of those situations that you have to look in retrospect. And this is one of those cases where maybe the manager just had to make a tough decision. It's just difficult to see that from a fan perspective, because you want to see these kind of fringe players get a run out, because we don't value this game in the grand scheme of things, considering what's coming up tomorrow. And maybe that's not the way that the team, the mentality of the team needs to operate. And that's where I put trust in, as I was mentioning earlier, in Arteta and the coaching staff to know, hey, we can't lose that winning mentality. Even if we end up losing a game, we need to go out there as strong as we can. We need the message to be, go out there with our best team and win. Yeah. So yeah, it is a stressful one.
Are you saying that kind of by playing a strong team and losing, there might be kind of a risk of some players thinking to themselves, if all of us together, like if our best team lost to Bournemouth, what are we going to do at PSG?
Yeah, and I don't know. I mean, obviously, I think maybe there's some nuance there, but I remember watching the game and seeing them kind of dejected at the end of it, and I was going, okay, so this could either be used as a springboard to put up a performance against Bournemouth, against PSG rather, and spark something in them. It could be a write-off, like maybe we don't know what's going on in the dressing room. Maybe it is just, let's just not get injured. But I did have this concern that a loss with such a strong team could have some non-negligible, non-zero effect on the players, maybe their confidence or their belief or something going into this game. And I'm not necessarily saying that that's dispositive, meaning I'm not saying that mental that loss would necessarily cause any issues tomorrow. But I can't imagine that it's a non-factor one way or another. And hopefully, like I said, the fact that it bends towards motivation rather than anxiety or kind of withholding some form of belief that they can pull it off tomorrow. And it's kind of like a hyper analysis of it. We might be thinking too deep into it, but this is a historic game for our club and for these players. And I don't know what the effect of losing tomorrow and being knocked out at this. It should be something that we're proud of, that they've gotten this far, but these are intense competitors. And I've done sports. I do, combat sports sometimes. I understand competition, not at that level though, not at the level of some of these people. It's kind of pathological, as I understand it from hearing, knowing some professional athletes and just knowing how some of them think. It's another way. It's something that you can't even identify with unless you are at that level. And it just, for me, to try to guess what the impact of something like this would have, like a loss to Bournemouth before a big game, you just got to, again, hope that Arteta and the coaching staff and the players have the right motivations and have the right things being said to pull them together, because I do think there is a chance that has some kind of a negative effect one way or another. Like, let's say this, it surely would have been better if we had won that game. And it would have been better if we won it comfortably, which is, would have, should have, could have. But I think there's also a benefit of going in there and not subjecting one of our strongest starting 11s to a loss at home, a record-breaking loss, because Bournemouth have never done that before such an important match. I just feel like I trust them, but I can't imagine that has a non-zero effect on the mentality of the players. Yeah. Me personally, but that's coming from a perspective of a non-professional athlete.
Yeah, I think kind of part of the requirement for those players is even if what you said is true, and I'm sure like it at least plays in the back of their minds, right?
Right.
I think kind of the requirement at this level of the game is to be able to like get over it in some way. Like I think the thing that that a lot of people don't pick up on when it comes to pro athletes is that these guys lie to themselves a lot. And like,
I'm an Arsenal fan. I am very used to lying to myself every time I pick up that remote.
Like, not to start. Okay, I'm gonna dip my toe into a conversation about religion just for 30 seconds.
That's fine.
But I've always had a theory that so many athletes are religious because they made it to like the highest level of the game. And if you do that, like, of course you're going to think that, God is looking out for you. And this isn't me commenting on religious beliefs or whether or not God exists or anything like that. I'm just saying, of course you would believe in God in those situations because you decided when you were a child that you wanted to be a professional athlete, and now you're playing in the Premier League, now you're playing in the NFL, now you're playing in the NBA. Like,
that's very interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just something that's been like rattling around in my head.
So in relation to kind of your discussion about lying to themselves, is it more that they believe that there's, that someone's looking out for them and that they're able to kind of compartmentalize maybe a loss like this because it's like, it's meant to be kind of a thing, and that they, they're going to just try their best and it doesn't affect them as negatively, maybe? Yeah. Is that what you're kind of getting at?
Yeah. I think lying to themselves might be a little bit of an unkind way to put it, but I think players are really good at thinking the way that they need to believe that they're capable of achieving even like the most unlikely feats. you know?
Okay. Yeah, I think that that's absolutely true. I think that it's a different mindset. So, and that's kind of why I had the caveat of I can't really put myself into what it would be like mentally to be at the precipice of what our players are, with the history of this club and the shortcomings that we've had in this competition and the struggle to get here, and everything's kind of building towards this thing that, you know, the Premier League is just this afterthought at this point. It's done. Now that there's this monumental task ahead of them. It's, you have to, I think you're onto something about the belief you need to have in, you know, if as long as we're going to get philosophical about it. There was a philosopher that I think it was Kierkegaard, who said that you need to kind of take a leap of faith and in belief in certain things, and to be able to take that leap of faith in themselves, and even in the face of adversity, I think does lend itself to a certain type of thought process that would explain why a lot of professional athletes at that level also can put faith into religion and things like that, because it does require a certain amount of maybe believing in something that can't be explained, or that, you know, we're getting really philosophical here, but
Yeah.
So yeah, more than I thought we would, but it's all good, because I think it's an interesting point about trying to get yourself in the mindset of some of these players and how they were brought up, and how they can kind of sometimes seemingly shrug things off that would, I think, maybe mentally cripple a lot of people who aren't from used to that kind of pressure. I mean, think about what you do with your jobs as you sit here listening to this podcast, and now imagine doing it in a live, full packed stadium, knowing millions of people all over the world are watching it, and knowing that your family's watching it, and knowing that everyone you know is probably watching it. I mean, that's a lot of pressure to do your job. Yeah, and you need to have almost a blind belief in yourself and your teammates and your coaches and your training, and being able to just kind of silence all that stuff out to be able to perform at the level that's required to do what you need to do and get the job done. So I can't even fathom what that's like going through their heads tonight as they go to bed, getting ready for this game tomorrow.
Yeah, it takes just an immense level of, I think, mental focus, as well as just a really high level of like mental and emotional strength. And it's really interesting to kind of think of like where they derive that strength from. Yeah, no, it's really funny that you brought up Kierkegaard, because you know what movie he comes up in? Recent movie,
Kierkegaard came up in a movie recently.
Thunderbolts.
What is that?
It's that new Marvel movie that came
Oh,
out.
okay,
Like,
yeah, with Florence Pugh and right?
yeah, that one. It's the one I was seeing, and then I texted you that picture of the 40.
The Spinal Tap.
Yeah. The anniversary release. But I just thought it was really funny that you mentioned Kierkegaard. We just keep on tacking on to this conversation.
Yeah. But no, I like the idea of you know, trying to get your head into what these players must be feeling or thinking going into this game. I mean, we might be overthinking it, but I imagine that I know that they have coaches there that specifically deal with the mentality side of maintaining some of these players. We saw it kind of firsthand in the All or Nothing documentary about how they manage that side of the game. And I'm guessing that faith had something to do with that, with certain players. Like, what motivates certain players to do certain things might not motivate others. And what part of being a good manager and man manager and having the right people around you is to know what it takes to motivate these players. And I'm guessing that it's not, well, I'm not guessing, it's definitely not universal for all of them. So a loss may hurt player A much more than it hurts player B. So you need to know that if we've just lost the game, we need to pay particular focus on that aspect of training with player B that it affects, or player A, whichever one I said, whichever one is actually affected by a loss. Whereas we know that the other player absolutely is unfazed for whatever reason. They are unfazed by the loss, and it's a, you know, goldfish be a goldfish, just clean slate, forget what happened, move on, which I think is probably a good skill to have. And probably one that goes into, I'm kind of digressing, but like recruitment too. Knowing, I know for a fact that they probably reach out and find how do players deal with losses when they're trying to say, is this someone that you want on your team? You need to know those kind of things. So I think it's a I want to say it's like a multifaceted concern that I had with the loss. And I just, again, putting my faith, to use the word, into Arteta and the coaching staff to motivate the players and get what they needed to do out of them so that they could perform, because it's a big one, guys.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like we could talk for hours about like the psychology of football players.
Yeah.
But speaking of being able to move on,
let's move on.
It was a great segue.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've been kind of writing something for the last few minutes, and it's a list of all the games in which we have dropped the 21 total points that we've dropped from winning positions in the Premier League this season. And I've kind of split them up into two different groups. So there's the group that I'm willing to excuse, and there's the group, or that's not the right way to put it. There's the group of dropped points that I think is kind of out of our control for the most part. I think there's one hybrid in there. And then there's a group of results that definitely were in our control. And so the first group is Brighton home. We dropped 2 points, and that's because of Rice getting sent off.
Yeah.
City away, we dropped 2 points. Trossard getting sent off. Brighton away, we dropped 2 points because of just the limited edition penalty that they gave to Saliba. Everton away, we dropped 2 points because they gave, again, another limited edition penalty against Miles Lewis-Skelly.
It hurts to hear all this stuff, but keep going.
Yeah. And then there's this game, Bournemouth home, and we dropped 3 points. And what I will say is we dropped 2 points. That the first 2 points we dropped are our own damn fault. And the last point that we dropped is because of this Evanilson goal that came in off his elbow, and VAR for some reason couldn't find the camera angle for this, which just that excuse always pisses me off, because you're supposedly the best league in the world in the year of our Lord 2025. Why don't you have all the camera angles like
of the penalty box?
Of the penalty box.
Like, yeah, why? How do you not have one there where there are corners that are taken and like things that happen that you should probably be able to focus on more than other areas of the pitch? Like if there's a foul in midfield, probably, maybe unless it's like a crazy dangerous challenge that they need to be able to, and even then it's not like you need that many angles. The area where you need the angles in the penalty box, we seem to be, they had to take one from like the club level. It looked like they were getting, I don't know, they're like someone on top of the Emirates with like binoculars and an iPhone that was zooming up. That was the angle that they're like, hey, look, this is not conclusive. It's like, yeah, no shit, it's not conclusive. Yeah. Like what kind of angle is this?
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense to me, because in other sports, right? Like the NFL. The NFL has cameras in the pylons. They have cameras, hanging over the stadium. They have cameras in the stands. The NFL, every NFL stadium could give each and every one of the people attending a game a full colonoscopy if they wanted to. That's where all the cameras are. That's how many cameras they have. Okay. And I'm not asking for all of that. But what I am asking for is for the Premier League to have at least, like a dozen different like it just feels like someone is just running back a stream of the game and they're just playing it on a monitor in front of us. And like it feels like the VAR officials are just watching on NBC Sports with the rest of us. And like that really pisses me off, because there's services in the United States that give you like a 64K all around, 360-degree view of the entire stadium. They can make it so that you are sitting in front of a giant screen and you can see everything from whatever angle you want. And I don't understand why the PGMOL don't have access to that angle. And for them to come out and basically say, oh yeah, like these are the only 2 shots we had. It's just, we're talking about millions and millions and millions of dollars being decided by these decisions that you're making. Like you can't.
Again, it's we don't have to stretch that far. I mean, it's 2025, man. Like we have we have artificial intelligence that's able to like tell us, that whatever. Point is, there's the technology's there, and it's not even difficult technology. It's camera. Like camera's been around for a while now. Put them behind the goal that like pointed through the goal, so that
put them in the posts. Put them in the
post. You could put a camera in freaking Ray-Bans, that can like walk around the street and identify people's faces. You can't tell me that you can't put more cameras like in a goalpost. That I just don't understand. I feel like I'm taking crazy pills sometimes, and I feel like it's whenever they're like, oh, we don't have a definitive angle, or we can't tell if the ball is out. Like, are you kidding me? Like Newcastle, that one. Like, what are we doing? What? I don't understand. There's so much at stake now.
Yeah.
And it's almost like willful at this point to not do anything. And maybe it's
on some level it is.
I get, you know what it is? Okay, so I understand this argument that there's a wanting to hold back on implementing all of this high technology because it's expensive. And really, when you look at like the grassroots leagues, when you look at the lower leagues, like they can't implement that. And functionally at that point, you'd be playing 2 different sports, right? In a way, in terms of how they're refereed and the precision of them. And that would be unfair in some way. But at the end of the day, they almost are 2 different sports. The stakes at the highest level, just financially, in terms of the money that people that sponsors have paid, the amount, and not that I give a crap about Fly Emirates and whether they're losing money or whether Coca-Cola or whatever is
not the billionaires,
not the billionaires. But let's think of the billionaires for once. No, I'm not saying that, but there is a level of like, sorry, this is what it is. This is the cream of the crop. This is the best of the best in terms of the highest level of the sport. And it's not like we're changing the rules. The rules are still there. It's just how do we enforce them and what are the tools that we have to enforce them? Yeah. And so I understand, like from a fairness perspective, yes, the lower leagues won't be able to have the same access to all this technology and because the money's just not there. But I don't think that's a good enough justification for not having the technology there when the money is there, because I think what you end up with is a better product at the end of the day. I guess you could debate that in that the drama and the bad calls is like part of the discourse. And I get that, but it's like, I like the truth. I think if you like the truth, at the end of the day, even if it goes against you, if it's there, if it's staring you in the face, you can kind of have some cognitive dissonance and be like, yeah, it's the truth, but it sucks. Yeah. But it's there and you have it. You have access to it. And I value that more than anything else on the pitch. I just want to know. I want to know it was a fair game and that we got to the truth of it. If it was a handball, it was a handball. If it wasn't a handball, it wasn't a handball. If it was out of play, it was out of play. If it wasn't, it wasn't. And I don't think I've heard any argument as to why we shouldn't implement everything that we can to make sure that we get to those correct decisions.
Yeah, and not to go full tinfoil hat on this, but I read Dale Johnson's column from ESPN. I know that's a waste of time most of the time, but it popped up on my phone. I wasn't doing anything. I figured I'd at least read the part about what happened with us. And what he said about the Evanilson handball was that it probably did come off of his elbow. However, VAR does not deal in probability. It's supposed to deal in certainty. And because they did not certainly believe, or because they could not certainly prove that the ball hit Evanilson's elbow, they couldn't overturn it through VAR, right? Is basically what Dale Johnson was saying. And honestly, credit to him, it does make a little bit of sense, but that's kind of what annoys me, is that not only do you have kind of this refusal to get with the times and to have these camera angles that would make these things more certain, but you are operating with a legal standard that makes it so that you always kind of have this fallback option of just saying, "Oh yeah, I couldn't tell, not 100%." So I'm
Yeah,
just gonna,
you know what it is? It is it's an abdication of responsibility.
yeah,
It's not me, it's the camera angle. It's like, well, fix it then.
Yeah.
You know what? Put in an HD so that you can't. So now, if you're going to make a stupid call, it's right there, and everyone can see that it's a stupid call and that you have your biases and whatever. Like, part of the reason why I think part of the reason a lot of the questions that we have over ref bias, over PGMOL bias, over FA bias, whatever you want to call it. I think if you had technology to implement that would allow you to more adequately get to the truth of the matter, you would flesh that out.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering, and back to your tinfoil hat, if that's probably why we're not seeing it, because that ambiguity allows them to maintain some power and control in the outcome of certain things. We're going to go down a rabbit hole if we go down that. But there's something there, I think.
Last point on it, and then we can kind of move on to the second half of these drop points fixtures. But I kind of think it is the best of both worlds, if you really think about it, right? Because on the one hand, officials can point to VAR and say, "Oh, well, if I make a bad call, VAR is there to fix it," right? And then VAR on the flip side of that can say, "Oh, well, we can't deal in probability. We have to be certain that we have the proof to overturn these calls. So it may be a wrong call, but we're not going to, overturn it and risk being wrong ourselves." You know what I mean? So it feels like both sides of the equation are passing the buck.
It was. Did you ever watch Rick and Morty?
Oh yeah.
Do you remember that? Do you remember that episode where everyone was in like a simulation and Morty's dad ended up in the simulation by accident? Do you remember?
Which season was this?
I don't remember a specific season, but just to paint the picture, there was like a simulation that they were trying to get information from Rick and trick him into giving him some kind of fuel or whatever they were trying to get some secret from him. So they put him in a simulation, which he knew he was in ultimately. But Jerry, Morty's dad, ends up in the simulation, and they kind of have to like divert power away to make it so that whatever he ends up in there. Is it the one with
like his boss keeps on saying yes? And the mailman's like, I fucking love that episode. Okay, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, with like apples, I'm crazy for apples, whatever. Yeah. Point is, there's a scene in that episode where they're like, acquisitions it was supposed to do that, and then acquisitions like, oh, well, we just get our rules from, or our orders from this department. Oh, well, this department, it's not our fault. We get it from that department. And then the head guy just, oh, I see. It's no one's fault.
Yes.
It's no one's fault. And,
yes,
and that's kind of like what's going on here. It's like, okay, well, it's not our fault. We can't, it's VAR. VAR needed to do their job. And then VAR's going, well, we don't have the technology to see that right now. We can't make a decision. Oh, well. And it's like, what are we doing here?
Yeah. And it is especially ironic because I feel like VAR and the referee, like the referees and the VAR officials really try to kind of protect each other in a way. And they're really just kind of pointing fingers at each other.
Right. Yeah, it's no one's fault. I got it. Thank you for the clarification. It's no one's fault. We have no idea if that was a handball or not, and we're supposed to believe that that's just the way it is. Sorry, it's the richest league in the world, and we can't figure out one of the first rules ever made in the game.
Figure it out. We see you. We see you, PJMOL. Yeah. No, that's okay. This has actually been quite eye opening. Okay. Well, so there's that side of it, right? Where just weird things are happening, and that includes, the second goal that Bournemouth scored against us. But the Bournemouth match is a hybrid in that the equalizer that Bournemouth scored, I think, is on us, right?
Mhm.
And then on top of that, you have Villa at home. We dropped 2 points. Liverpool at home, we dropped 2 points. Chelsea away, we dropped 2 points. Palace home, we dropped 2 points. Brentford home, we dropped 2 points, right? And all of those are matches in which we were ahead by at least 1 goal. Villa actually is the only one where it was more than 1 goal. But we were ahead, and then we conceded, and we no longer were ahead, and the match finishes a draw. And I just kind of want to ask, right? Because again, those first 5 fixtures, like, okay, we have some excuses there, but these next 5, and a few of these have happened recently. I just kind of want to get your take on why we're dropping these points from winning positions and kind of what's going on there.
Why? That's a great question, Sham.
Yeah.
I don't fucking know.
Well,
no.
Well, Arsenal asked me to ask you.
Yeah. That's a.
Tell you what, do you want to hear my theory?
Yeah, well, so I have my theory, but yeah, go for it.
Okay, no, you go first if you.
I mean, I think part of it is injuries, right?
Yeah.
I do, and I think that there is a knock-on effect of losing certain players for different parts of the season, and not you look at teams that play consistently well, like Liverpool, and they get kind of lucky sometimes with injuries, but it's not just injuries, right? I think as much as we've progressed as a team, I think there is a certain mental aspect of it. I think we've gotten a lot better. We've gotten a lot better, but one thing that we haven't nailed down that's a small margin, because remember, this is a game at this level, we're talking very small margins, but the difference between that next little bit that you need to do to be super successful and competitive is just as big, I would say, as the amount of work and difficulty it took to get from where we were when Arteta took over to where we are now. So we've gotten there, which is a lot of work, and then this little bit, because of how difficult that is to maintain consistently, I think that's overlooked, and it's understated about how difficult that little percentage of variance and the effect that the way the players deal with that kind of variance, because there's variance in the game, like it's going to happen. Forget the ref things, but just within a match of football, there's variance, and then being able to consistently deal with that variance, I think, is one of the most difficult things you can do to push you over from being a team that's dominant to actually dominant and converting it consistently into trophies and things like that. I think that variance gets diminished when you have a world-class bench like City did during their dominant years. I think that variance is diminished when you have a player like Salah, who is doing unimaginable things this season, and staying consistently fit. You can kind of like bridge the gap a little bit, but I think that's just the last hurdle that we have to overcome as a club to fix that little percent, which is extremely difficult.
Yeah. I think the injuries is a big part of it, because there's so many matches where we just seem to kind of run out of momentum, right? And that I think there's like you said, there's probably a mental component to that, but also just every time that happens, I can't help but just think to myself, be really nice to have Jesus coming off the bench right now, or Havertz at the very least would be running the center backs ragged and creating space.
Or Calafiori.
Yep. Calafiori.
What about a full season? What about a full season with Calafiori this season? I mean, how does that change the dynamic? Like, to what you're saying.
What about a full season with Ben White?
Yeah.
Like having Ben White to come on, and obviously you sacrifice that defensive one-on-one solidity, but White, the couple times we've seen him this season, has really opened things up on that right flank, and there's so many games where maybe we could have used that. So yeah, I think that's a big part of it, and I do think that is kind of related to kind of the focus of my theory behind it, which is we don't have the efficiency in front of goal to really take advantage of that and to really establish these unassailable leads, right? I like just think back to the Bournemouth match. Martinelli missed a couple, and I know they're half chances, but at this level of the game, it feels like we never score half chances. You know what I mean? And so just Martinelli had a couple half chances, didn't put them away. I think Trossard had like a close range header that he aimed right at Kepa. Rice flashed a couple shots wide. Saka cut onto his right foot from the left side of the penalty area, and he went for the far side of the goal. He missed that as well. These are any one of those are moments that maybe could have put the game to bed, but we missed those chances, and that let Bournemouth kind of come back into the match. And so I just kind of think to myself, if you had a Nico Williams, if you had an Alexander Isak, even if you had like a Xavi Simons or something, right? Like, do they put those chances away? Do they come up with something out of thin air and make it 2-0, make it 3-0, and then Bournemouth, really do start to kind of give up on the game? I think more often than not they do. And I think that's the next step for us in the summer. It's just another reason why, the focus of the summer really should be getting multiple attacking players who can come in and really just invent moments of magic, or at least put clear chances away. So I think that's kind of the issue with us. But it's just, I don't know. It's really frustrating because like 21 points dropped from winning positions in the Premier League is frankly a little embarrassing.
Yeah, especially considering what we've been moving towards. It feels like a giant step back, and it's weird to consider like such a massive step back on the precipice of a Champions League semifinal. But it I can't help thinking that it is.
Yeah.
At least in the league, it certainly is.
Well, I mean, like as much as injuries have affected us and refereeing decisions haven't helped and Liverpool have been excellent, I do think kind of just that inability to put games to bed is kind of another thing that really held us back from being able to properly challenge for the title, right? I mean, Anfield could have been a game that mattered if half of these matches we actually did hold on to the points instead.
Yeah, and then all of a sudden, Liverpool are flying and they don't really have the pressure of us breathing that close down their neck. I think that if we were able to put that kind of pressure on them, I think that you might see a different result potentially. It's not even just to be able to bring it down that close on their backs. I think really would have tested them more than we ended up doing, given the fact that we became our own worst enemy in a lot of these matches.
Yeah. All I'll say is that, when the gap was like 5-6 points, Liverpool looked nervy, right? There were cracks showing. There was a bit of drama behind the scenes, and then we proceeded to just, achieve a 53-point pace over the last 10 games.
And it's kind of it's not just limited to this season now. You don't want to put the team in a situation where in the future, if there's a title race, teams are not as scared of you breathing down their necks.
Yeah.
Right? You want to put the fear in them. And I think that season after season, if you end up capitulating and you end up again becoming your own worst enemy in games that you really shouldn't have, and I'm not including the games where we were completely screwed by the referees and things like that. That's not something we can really control. But the ones that we could control and that we didn't do for whatever reason, including not recruiting properly, which were avoidable issues that we discussed way early on in the history of this podcast, then you run the risk of that aspect of a season. Meaning, if you find yourself in a situation where you're chasing down a title holder or rather a league leader, that it becomes less impactful that you're close to them in points.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and I think that, again, when it comes down to small margins, that little tiny bit that makes a difference in the end of a season, those kind of relinquishment of power, I guess you can call it, the power to put fear into a team when you're breathing down their neck, it's a problem.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Hopefully we can fix that over the summer and sign some actual players that are scary, right? Because
Like Fellaini.
I was hoping for at least like Gyökeres or something. But yeah, it's I think PSG really kind of painted the picture pretty well, where they in the first leg they committed multiple players to defending Saka, and they didn't seem worried at all about Martinelli and Trossard. And those two guys are the ones who got the big chances in the game, and they didn't put them away. And it's, I think that kind of tells you everything you need to know about Arsenal's attacking efficiency right now. But let's talk about the other 2/3 of Arsenal's team here, because there have been some developments transfer wise. So let's get into those before we preview PSG real quick. But reports are heating up about Real Madrid being interested in William Saliba, and this is fairly old news. It comes up every once in a while, but there does appear to be a little bit of hysteria over it this time around, just because I think the team and the fan base are in something of a bad moment, right? The vibes have really dissipated after we knocked Real Madrid out of the Champions League. But I just kind of wanted to, I guess, on a scale of 1 to 10, how concerned are you that Saliba's joining Real Madrid this summer?
Not very.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I hope I don't, eat my hat, but I feel like it'll be tempting if it was any team but Real Madrid. That's what I keep coming back to. So I'm like arguing with myself here, because I like to believe that there's a project here that he's completely bought into, and that he sees where we're going, and that he wants to see it finish out. Unfortunately, nowadays, I don't think I think that's very idealistic. I don't know if that's the way it works anymore. And I am worried only insofar as it's that team, and that if it's real, them pushing for him, even if he doesn't go there, what it does to like destabilize him in some way, which, I mean, I'm not trying to put on a tinfoil hat, but we've seen a couple of uncharacteristic mistakes in succession from Saliba. That's not to put a damper on his overall performance, which I think he's been just as good. But that kind of a concern I have, even though it might not be the reality that that's had anything to do with it, which it probably didn't. But you can imagine what genuine interest from a team like Real Madrid could do to a player.
Yeah.
Even if they stay at the club that they're at. I like to think that it goes back to the mentality that we think a little bit differently than they do, or vice versa. And that they can somehow not let that negatively impact them on the pitch. And that I know a lot of times, like the outside world kind of fades away for some of these players and these athletes when they step on the pitch, and none of that matters. And you just got to hope that Saliba is one of those players, that if Real Madrid do try to push from him and they don't get him, that it doesn't affect him in any way, because he's so important to our team. That being said, I mean, is it possible with a team like Real Madrid coming? Yeah, it is. I think it is. I don't. My heart is telling me no. that he's not going to go anywhere, right?
Yeah.
But kind of my brain is saying he may.
On a scale of 1 to 10, I'm at about a 3 right now.
Yeah, that's about right.
And
3, 4.
Yeah. And I'm fairly certain that this is what the situation is with Saliba. I don't think Real Madrid could afford our sticker price that we would put on him this summer, right? Because I think if Madrid came knocking this summer, I think we'd tell them 9 figures or go home.
Definitely.
Next season,
when it's a free transfer and all that,
yeah. So and that's the thing. I think the avenue for Real Madrid to land Saliba right now is to wait 2 years until he's a free agent.
Yeah.
But that's still a problem for us because, this is the summer where, kind of we try to extend players when they hit two years left on their contract because we're smarter about retaining our best players than Liverpool are. And I think the conversation this summer with Saliba is going to end up being something like, I'm happy to ride out these next 2 years, but you guys have to show me that signing an extension here would be worth my time, right? And that's not to say like I don't think it's to the level of like you have to win trophies or I'm out, right? Obviously, there's some level of that involved here, but I think if you're a player who's been in the team this season, who's kind of been around the club, who has been very intimately involved with a lot of the goings on, I think this season you're going to understand that it just wasn't our year to some extent. But I think also January in our inaction in that transfer window is going to sting for a lot of players. So I think Saliba is going to say, hey, I understand why things didn't pan out for us this season, but I want to know that the ownership is actually trying to win as much as we are. So I think we're going to have to prove that to him one way or another. So yeah, and I think if we don't do that, then Saliba's more than happy to just make his money and, give it a couple more tries in an Arsenal jersey. And then summer of 2027, Real Madrid come in, offer him a crazy salary, and he's out of here. And honestly, I wouldn't begrudge him that because I don't think Saliba especially strikes me as a player who's not going to stay at Arsenal his entire career, right? Saka might, Odegaard might, Rice might, Gabriel might, but I think Saliba has always had that air of a player who is kind of destined for
being one of the greatest defenders in the entire in the world, like
exactly,
and winning every year.
Yeah, and unfortunately, that's just not the case with us, And even if we were excellent, the Premier League just does not allow for that, right? But if you go to La Liga and you join Barcelona or Real Madrid, yeah, you could finish your career with a couple dozen titles if you want to. And
I guess you got to hope that like the challenge is something that he values more, I mean, there's an extent to that, right? It's not like we're nothing. We're one of the biggest clubs in the world. He's in London. Like, it's like there's a lot of draws that we've heard ad nauseum about why Arsenal is such an attractive place to be.
Yeah.
It's not like we're saying, if he really wants a challenge, then, this is a perfect league for him. But I do mirror your feelings on him. I always kind of felt that about Saliba. Even notwithstanding his Arsenal shirts when he was a kid and things like that. I don't know if it's grounded in any kind of actual observable or quantifiable evidence. I think it's more of just a vibe that I've had.
Yeah.
And I think it may be rooted in just like we haven't really had a player like that where he's, we have Saka, but he's a different kind of vibe, right? Because he's homegrown and he's our boy and all that. But like with Saliba, I think a lot of it, my hesitancy with him, his early days with us were kind of tumultuous, especially with the issues that he had not being able to play in the tournament and, back when he was in France and, maybe not being selected early on. And then he kind of solidified himself in the team. So I'm wondering if how much of my hesitancy to be like, yeah, no way he would stay here is grounded in just the way that his Arsenal journey began with us versus actual something in reality.
Yeah. And, he has said multiple times, right, that he's happy here. He's living the dream. Arsenal was where he's always wanted to play.
They always say that, though, right?
Yeah, I mean, you would say that, but I do think there is a level of truth to that. I think there's only two clubs that Saliba would leave us for, and it's just one of them is knocking on the door, and then PSG is the other club that I think he would leave us for. But
really, you think? Okay, I could.
Yeah,
especially now.
Just because he's French.
Maybe.
And he'd get to go and just walk Liga over and over and over. But also, PSG, I think, are just a little bit more established in the Champions League than we are, even though we have the same number of Champions League titles. I don't know. I feel like PSG strikes me as a club that really ticks a lot of boxes if I were Saliba. But yeah. Overall, I'm not that worried. I think it's a big summer for Arsenal in terms of getting him to commit his future past the next 2 years. And if we don't, we don't. Although I would at least like to get something for him in terms of value.
Right. I'd be ashamed to let him go for free. Unless he wins us the Champions League in the league, then fine, do what you got to do. But even then it would hurt a little bit. But losing him for free just seems bad. It doesn't make me feel good.
Definitely, like if we don't win anything until like between now and June of 2027, right? And Saliba leaves for free, I think that's gonna hurt.
Yeah.
If we won a couple titles and he left for free, I think I could stomach that to an extent. I would just despise Real Madrid for the next several years. But yeah. Another departure and this one's way more. I mean, this one is certain because Fabrizio Romano gave it the here we go.
Oh, right.
But it's Jorginho to Flamengo.
Mm-hmm.
And we signed him in January 2023. I think he's been serviceable for us. He definitely hasn't been like phenomenal or anything, but we signed him for 12 million. I think he's been a good locker room guy, very good influence on kind of the players around him, but he's also stepped in and had some really impressive performances for us when we needed someone to, just fill in for Partey or Rice or, whatever it may be. So, I guess my question is, what does Jorginho leaving the club mean for us this summer? Do you think we have to, how much do you think we'll have to replace him? Or do you think we have someone internally who can take over that role? Or is it not that big of an impact? And,
So first of all, I think that he exceeded my expectations as a signing for this club. He wasn't earth shattering, but he did a lot more than I thought he was going to do. And I think that it's a credit to him. It's a credit to the scouting. It's a credit to Arteta for putting the faith in him to do that. Again, he didn't bust the doors open, but he absolutely did a job for us. And it's kind of sad the way that where we are right now, where he absolutely could have gotten meaningful minutes, but that freak injury with his lung and all that stuff, which is, hopefully he's okay with that. But because I think that he would have been a big help in that game where Partey was out. Against PSG. So he definitely has skills that, when he's on top of it, can actually help us and calm us down in the midfield. I think that was a problem against that game, which is what we saw in the opening goal, and only goal, I guess. But yeah, I think that if we were looking towards the summer, you're losing maybe not necessarily a player that rocks the pecking order for how the manager is going to think about fielding an 11, but it definitely seems like you're losing a personality that's helping younger players, that's helping, especially the Brazilian ones, that's helping. You're losing a personality that. So when that happens, I think there's probably a level of mourning in a way that the locker room might not be as bright as it was when he was there, and I think that is one of those kind of factors that maybe doesn't get as much attention as what happens on the pitch, but it could be in some cases just as important. So I'd imagine either his influence in the locker room needs to be not such that not to the extent that him leaving would severely negatively impact everyone, or if the managers look at his leaving and look at what kind of an impact he has from a personality perspective, they need to either have someone else step in and be a little bit extra or come up with something else to fill that void. Maybe with another experienced player that can give you some calm and stability behind there, that's been there and done that. Those kind of players where they don't play every minute, but they're important in the locker room, are just as important as in some cases as signing your marquee striker in terms of doing things over the course of a season.
Yeah. I wonder if that means that Partey is going to be extended if Jorginho is leaving, because if Partey and Jorginho leave, that's 2 6s,
right,
that you have to replace, and I don't see Arsenal being willing to do that. No. Who knows? Maybe they'll go get a more traditional left back, and then Lewis Skelly becomes kind of one of the options at 6, and then we sign Zubimendi. I don't think that makes that much sense in terms of squad building. I think Lewis Skelly has firmly established himself as
starting left back.
So yeah, I don't know. Maybe they let them both go and they bring in Zubimendi and then like a less established player to be kind of Zubimendi's deputy. There's that one player in, I think he's in Liga, named Agume or something like that.
That's a good shout.
Yeah. There's a couple players out there who are available kind of on the cheap. But yeah, I think Zubimendi's definitely going to be the guy, and then you just kind of have to figure out what you're doing behind him. So I do think it will kind of necessitate just a move or two in the transfer window, whether that's extensions or another signing. But yeah, I think ultimately it was probably time for Jorginho to leave, and that sucks because he's, again, I think he's a really good player. Really funny guy in person, I will say that. But yeah, I just clearly like a really big locker room presence. I remember that Gabriel quote where he said, "I don't know what I'm going to do if he leaves. He's like my father to me."
That's what I'm saying.
So yeah, I think it will be surprisingly tricky to navigate, but yeah, all in all, I think it was a transition that we needed to make. And another transition we need to make is overcoming this 1-0 deficit at PSG tomorrow.
Yep.
So before we get out of here, just kind of, I guess I'll ask it like this. No, I don't want to. What odds do you give us of overturning it tomorrow?
I think the odds. This is a crazy game because if we show up, we can do it.
Yeah.
I think that the odds are not in our favor right now. I don't know specifically what they would be. I'll leave that to the handicappers, but I think that we need to go into this game treating it like 0-0.
Yeah.
And we need to go in there and we need to win 2-0. We need to not concede any goals. We need to score 2. And that's our game plan. And we at least need to score 1. But I think the game is going to be in there and win 2-0. I think that's what we're going to be, maybe more. Obviously, that'd be ideal. But they're going to say, go in there and do everything you can to score 2 goals and not concede anything. And I think they need to treat it. It's kind of hard, though, because it's hard to do that and treat it like a 0-0. But I think the main thing is going to be not to concede. And I would like to see them try to get an early goal.
Yeah.
Because I think that'll calm the nerves. And I think that, I don't know, it's kind of uncharted territory for us. I don't know how the players are going to react. It could be that they go in there and it's just this, it's everything we know that this Arsenal team can do, right? Or it could be this complete collapse where the occasion gets to them too much, the stadium gets to them too much, the pressure gets to them too much. And I think that's the anxiety that we all are feeling. And we don't, touch wood, I don't want to put it out in the universe, but that's the concern. And I think that it's going to be a real test for these players to just put all of those concerns and feelings aside, to step in there and treat it like that first game never happened.
Yeah.
And go in there and just beat them as badly as you can in front of their own fans. Like, get them angry, take it out of the ref's hands, take it out of PSG's hands. And it's easier said than done because this is an amazing PSG side.
Yeah.
So that's why I think so let me say this. If we can go in there and this Arsenal team can do what we know that they're capable of, I think we could potentially win this game easily. Even as good as PSG are, we could just, blow them out of the water.
Yeah.
That being said, easier said than done. And as it stands, I kind of have the odds against Arsenal on this one. I know that's probably not what anyone wants to hear, but that's just my feeling.
I mean, I'll put it about 30% for us.
That's fair. That's a fair one.
Yeah. And here's the thing, right? Like, I think we have plenty of things going for us. Number one, I think we're going to have the full lineup that we beat Real Madrid with over 2 legs, right?
Touch wood.
Knock on wood. Hopefully Timber's back. I think it sounds like Odegaard's going to be okay. Marino's going to be back in the lineup. Party's going to be back. Mm-hmm. And, I think that lineup has a lot of chemistry, which is really important. Number 2, the matchup is there, right? Because you're going to have Marino playing at center forward and kind of at the back end of the home leg. He was winning every aerial duel. He was winning second balls. The physical battle was kind of a wash in his favor. You're going to have Party back at 6, hopefully able to better deal with PSG purposely trying to cut off the passing lanes to Saka the way that they were doing in the home leg. You're going to have Rice back at left 8, and I think in that position, players like Vitinha and Joao Neves are not going to be able to live with him kind of running with a full head of steam and being more of the two-way player that he's been so good as. And then on top of that, two more factors. The third thing is, and people might laugh at this, I think it's going to help us that we're away from home.
I mentioned this, I think, on the last pod.
Yeah,
totally,
yeah.
I agree.
I'm not going to knock players or people who attend the home matches or the home crowd or anything. All I'm going to say is I think the players overthink it a little bit sometimes at the Emirates, and also, I think they respond better to hostility from people who aren't their fans. You know what I mean? So being in, the Parc des Princes, and you're going to have all these people lighting flares and banging drums and screaming at them. I think actually that's going to be good for them in terms of just like riling them up for the game. And the fourth thing is we do have a couple reinforcements back for the game, right? Ben White will be available again. Trossard will be back on the bench, ready to kind of come on as a super sub if we need him to. Obviously, there's Winery and Calafiori, I think, might be back as well. And I think the thing that we missed the most against PSG in the first leg was outside of Saka, there wasn't really anyone who can create a moment of magic in the final third right now, except for Calafiori.
Okay.
And I think Calafiori is one of those players who, plays with a bit of a free role. I mean, it's not usually reckless or anything what he does, but I think he floats around a little bit, and he's just a little bit more daring, a little bit more, creative on the ball than some of our other players are. So I think if he comes in, he'll more likely than not be able to at least create a threatening moment for us. So yeah, and all those make me feel good. But I will say, you know, um, one, PSG are an excellent team. They're arguably the best team left in the competition. Although Barcelona and Inter certainly both made their cases for that tonight. Although like Inter's going to be in the final, so Barcelona's not the best team left in the tournament. Anyway, PSG is really good. They have devastating attacking players. We already saw that in the first leg, where Dembele shinned a ball in off the post from 25 yards out. Right?
Is he gonna? Do we know any update on whether he'll be able to play? I know there was a question mark, but I right when I saw that, I was like, he's probably gonna play. Come on.
Yeah, it sounds like he's back. He trained with PSG yesterday. So
okay, so yeah, he's all right. Yeah.
So
we will never get that lucky.
No. But they have that. They have the quality. And Kvaratskhelia just had Timber in hell for 20 minutes. A lot of good players, and Desiree Doué is going to try some things, and maybe they'll come off. We'll see, right? So they're an excellent team with really, really talented players with a high technical ability. They're no slouches. So if you have one slip up against these guys, they will probably make you pay for it. The other thing is, we have never been in a situation like this and overcome it. And part of that is just because we're not experienced in the Champions League, and part of that is because we don't have a history of success there. And these players sometimes have a habit of, I think, getting a little over emotional in certain situations. So it's just there's going to be this burden on them of proving that they can overcome the moment, and proving that this team is special in a way that no Arsenal team before them has been, which might play on their minds a little. So we'll see. Ultimately, I do think we have enough to do it. It's just really up to the players to go out there and do it.
Yeah,
and hopefully they do. So
yeah, hopefully.
Yeah. Got anything else that you wanted to add before we get out of here?
No, let's just do this.
Yeah. All right. Well, hopefully we walk in there tomorrow, and hopefully tomorrow night, Drew and I will be talking to you guys about how we feel about our chances in Munich, and not reviewing on how the season is basically over. Arsenal, please don't make me have that conversation just yet. I don't want to do it. But yeah, we'll be back with you to talk about that. Hopefully it'll be a fun, jovial, happy conversation, and not a depressing, moody one. But thank you so much for being here with us, for taking the time to listen to John and I, talk about Arsenal, and kind of go through these different subjects. It really means a lot to us. We really appreciate, your viewership, and kind of you joining us for the ride. So if you've subscribed to the pod, thank you so much for doing that. If you haven't, we have a YouTube channel. It's called Not That Kind of Gooner. Same name as the podcast. We also have an Instagram account. You can follow us there at Not That Kind of Gooner. Please do leave us a 5-star review, whether that's on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. It really does help out in terms of putting the pod out there for people. And you can also follow the pod on Twitter at Not That Gooner and on Blue Sky at notthatgooner.bsky.social. And I'm Sham. You can follow me on Twitter at Shamsdale. You can follow me on Blue Sky, shamsdale.bsky.social. That's John. You can follow him on Twitter at 305cast or on Blue Sky, yellowribbons.bsky.social. And yeah, we'll be back with you tomorrow night. 2 pods in 2 days because I am not good at scheduling sometimes. So, but yeah, so take care, and it won't be a long wait this time. And we will talk to you after the PSG match. So until then, take care and bye. Bye.
Secret Gooner